This is the Crystal Chronicles, your Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia podcast, with Kreese, Mino, and Mark, bringing you all your Defo news and talk. Welcome to Season 3, the Chaos Era. Now let's start the show.
Well, as of 4 minutes ago, we have lots of breaking news. Ultimate Brothers has launched. We have new banners. We have the 6th tier of Dimensions and Entropy. And we had some unexpected news. This all on the heels of David Bowie himself introduced in Defo. So there's a lot to talk about tonight on episode 85 or 86 of the Crystal Chronicles. I didn't update it in the announcement, but it is episode 86 of the Crystal Chronicles, your Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia podcast. Thank you all for joining us, whether you're on Twitch tonight. We do record live every Thursday night, 8 p.m. Central. Whether you're watching video on demand, YouTube, or listening to the podcast, we just appreciate you all joining us on this little thing called a podcast. Tonight, we are joined by not only myself, Mark, but by our friend Kreese. Kreese, how are you doing?
Good evening, everyone. I am a little exhausted, but I am hyped for tonight.
Good to hear you, Kreese. And we also have two special guests. Mino's taking the week off because to defend her boy, Firion, we had to have Aarolei here. Aero, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome tonight.
Very good. And we also brought on somebody to defend poor Yuffie. And his name is Inkwelder of Tonberry Troop fame. Ink, how you doing?
I am doing outstanding. Ticket luck is flowing strong tonight. I hope it does for everybody.
Just pulled your Yuffie EX in limited tickets. Very, very nice. Thank you, Hate13, part of our community, for the introduction. He is the narrator of our new intro. So let us know how you think of what you think of the new intro. Had a couple different versions of it, so we'll be playing around with that. But and I do want to leave it out there. That's a new intro for the podcast. We are looking to find a video for that for Twitch and YouTube. So if anybody wants to maybe think about volunteering their time, we might even be able to send you some TCC merch as thank you for a kind of video to go with that intro for our YouTube and Twitch, if that is your area of expertise. I've kind of gotten a little decent with sound editing. Video editing is a different thing, and some people do have that a little bit better than myself. So let's talk about the news of the day. Some exciting news that we do need to talk about. Yeah, there's some gem sales. That's always exciting, but we got news just minutes before the show started. Announcement in-game that the elemental weakness attack system has been changed. So this is something we've mentioned before, something that they do have in the Japanese version of the game. So as I understand it, no longer will your elements hit your multi-element attacks hit the weakness and resistance at the same time if you imperil the enemy, or if the enemy is weak to any of your elements, you will do full modified damage. Does that make sense? Is that correct? Ink,
let me clarify a little bit to make it a little simpler. The way it works is that the way it used to work is that it would calculate weakness and resistance to both element and damage type at the same time, and they'd be multiplied together. So if something was resistant to a damage type but also weak to the element, you'd still do less damage than you normally would. What they've done now is they make it so that it calculates element weakness or resistance first. And if the enemy is weak to the element, it skips the damage type resistance weakness step. So if you are hitting elemental weakness, you're always doing multiplied damage. You're never doing less damage, even if it would resist that damage type.
Very good. Aero Inc., anything to add on the elemental weakness change?
I love it because it makes mix kits like Leon's infinitely more usable if you're able to imperil that element. So
you know how you can imperil that element, Aero? You could pull for Golbez.
I'm not pulling. Nope. I'll just wait for the EX Plus and I'll have it on him.
We also got the news that our summon board points were modified. So there was a change in the lower levels, but for the level 100 summon board grinds, the ones we normally all do to get our treasures and our masteries, they have been increased. The base number of points have been increased from 100 to 150. So that is super exciting. So with your super synergy or double XP, that's 300. With a double book, that's 600. With a triple book, that's 900. So a lot more points, a lot faster. Now, according to the in-game notice, and we can test it out to make sure, that does not change the number of wild points you get per attempt. So I believe wild points is still 100 per attempt, but your main characters are getting 150 base per attempt. So very cool, much needed, and very excited, especially on the heels of just getting Ultimate Brothers tonight. So anybody have any thoughts on that?
It is 47 less battles that we have to do. 47 less runs that we have to do because of that.
So
if you're using a triple book.
Based on what? So 47 less runs to do what? To master all the boards, to get all the treasures?
Sorry, to basically treasure everybody and master as many as possible along the way.
Right.
So I crunched the numbers. And so basically you need to master, you'll get to master 21 characters, so that's an extra 4. You'll be 22 because your special boosted will also get mastered, but yes. You basically get 4 extra masters and everyone treasured with 47 less runs that you have to do.
Yeah. So yeah, as Dreamy is mentioning in chat from the Tomberry Troop, you're talking about with double XP or special synergy or special boosted, and a triple XP tome or book, you're talking 2 runs to just get treasures per character. So very, very easy. Maybe even worth it instead of using those wild points to just run through characters if you can do it fast enough and change characters fast enough if you have a good strategy about that. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. So very exciting news. Thank you, Squex, for that good news. Also some other news. We did get Bartz's costume. It would be, what do they call this costume?
I think it's his classic costume.
Yeah, the classic, the Final Fantasy.
Maybe Freelancer. I forgot to check the name.
Final Fantasy 5, kind of there, like you said, the classic costumes. But we also got stickers in the Dissidia DB, what do they call those? Dissidia Point DP Exchange, as opposed to DB, which is the database that Rem manages. Thank you, Rem, for all your good work. But the DP Exchange, Dissidia Point Exchange, has 4 new Bartz stickers. One says, hey ya, one says, nice, one says, thanks, with exclamation points after all of them. One says, see you around, because Bartz apparently screams everywhere he goes. So, 2,000.
The Bartz stickers are going to replace my Tifa stickers on my sticker list. I am excited.
A full round of Bartz for everybody. Lots of excitement there. I'm sure everybody's already also gotten their Bartz stickers. But yeah, 500 each, 500 points each for each of your Bartz stickers for total 2,000. I've got 2,000 sitting there right now, so I may pick all 4 of them up as we speak.
We are getting notification that Brothers is the Nerf version, which we'll talk more about when we get to the Brothers summon grind, but just to make that clear now.
So we will talk about what that means when we talk about Ultimate Brothers, but it does appear that the Ultimate Brothers, which just launched a couple minutes ago, is what we would say a nerfed version. So not the original version that the Japanese players got, but a slightly easier version, comparable to, as you know, in the later versions of the game, as time's gone by, the veils have been dropped from those level 100 fights of the earlier bosses. But we'll talk about what exactly that looks like as we go, because I assume one of you knows what that looks like. I have no idea. But before we get to Ultimate Brothers, which is the event that just hit, and we haven't even had time to do, maybe Aero and Ink are working on it right now as we speak, we do need to talk about the event that launched between last episode and this episode, and that is Dastardly Dominus, the Emperor event. And so I want to start with that. We got, of course, a new banner with that. And on that banner, we got Firion's EX and Emperor's full kit with his EX. And Gilgamesh was also on that, but he did not have anything exciting. Firion did get a level 70 and an EX realization. So Aarolei is going to talk about all of the cool things Firion got, because she is a big fan of Firion. So Aero, take that away.
All right, so I have to say, to begin with, one thing that I guess a lot of people were disappointed with is that Firion did not get a rework here. However, he was one of those characters that got reworked right before Cosmos era started. So you kind of know what he already does. He heals, he self-sustains, kind of batteries the party. He does a lot of little things, but do all those little things wind up adding up into a good character? I think so, but I'll let you be the judge once I'm done telling you what this kit now has in addition to what it already did. So to begin with, he got a C68 that is able to raise his own eye brave and MX brave by 20%. And he also gained a new AA, of course, just like everybody else, called HP Drain Advanced Thrust. It's pretty simple. It's a 2-hit brave plus HP attack, and it winds up healing Furion for about 20% of his HP. And it also, if you decide to bloom it, will add additional overflow, and that's very cool. For 5 turns, I believe, with a bloom. So the other thing is, if you also C70 him, he will gain additional overflow to the AA, general stuff. So honestly, this bloom effect, it sounds so simple on paper, but it really matters for Firion because you can use it to heal him up. And his whole kit now heals. Everything heals. And you always want to keep above 50% HP. He doesn't really work if you don't have him above 50% HP because his attacks won't do as much damage. He doesn't even do as many hits with his blood weapon. So being able to always get yourself back to 50% and then immediately go into your EX is pretty cool. Also, the other cool thing is he always likes to regen. He's kind of got this whole regen thing going on now where not only does he have regen from his 35 skill, his set skill 2, he also has gained it on his new EX ability called Hot Blooded. Hot Blooded adds additional attack and brave regen, and it's a framed buff, so it's unique to him. And I really like this because I felt like Firion needed this really badly because one of these things is he doesn't have the best hit count in the world on any of his skills, and I think that really gives him it helps push him over the top to be able to keep up with the damage that other characters do. So with that said, I think you need to go all the way in with Firion if you're going to choose to build him, because the only way to get the hot-blooded buff is to go already to 2 out of 3 on the EX+. At that point, you might as well go all the way in, and if you do so, it's not all bad because you gain access to a Brave++ and an Attack++. So with that, the Brave Plus, it's 2 hits. It's still Brave batteries the party based on his attack. And the HP Plus gives him a chance now to overflow while he gains a whole bunch of Brave based on his attack. All this stuff, again, heals him. So it's very nice. So I do want to go into, before I give it to the other host to talk about him, I really like Firion because He's very easy to slot into teams because he's able to just kind of hold his own. He heals himself. He gives your party some brave. He does this. He has an AoE attack. He's always easy to appreciate the max brave aura for. He has that as long as you can keep him above 50% HP. The main thing is the other half of it, the eye brave portion on his aura is very key to building regen teams. And we just recently received a very good character for this in Rosa. So as long as you have the right team set up, you can be regenning a lot of brave every turn, along with doing really good damage from Firion. But there are some downsides to all that power. If Furion happens to fall under 50% HP, he literally loses all of his bonuses, it feels like, until he heals back above that threshold. And there's another really bad problem with this. He kind of has really terrible HP. I'm not going to lie. It's down there with characters like Terra. Except in the cases of other low HP characters, you're just not that dependent on keeping max HP or over 50% HP at all times. So to get over that problem, I would highly recommend bringing other healers to the party where you can get over that hurdle so you don't have to be forced to use a blood weapon or your AA when you may not ideally want to use either. So my actual conclusion with all that is that Firion may not be a groundbreaking EX, but he is very solid overall. With his new frame buff and increased overflow to his EX, along with more ways to heal himself, he's rarely actually dipping under 50% HP, but I would recommend considering Firion for purple if you're just looking for some sort of new all-rounder character who has self-sustained capabilities along with respectable damage and the capability to Brave Battery the team via his Seize attack and Brave Plus.
Thank you, Aero. Crease, Ink, did you have anything to add on Firion?
I have a couple comments to make. Number one, I think he's a pretty strong physical attacker. He is all melee. No, he's a mixed melee ranged. Never mind. Yeah. One thing to keep in mind is that while he is pretty nice, especially in Int Brave teams, because he has that Int Brave aura, he's not a great turn-by-turn Brave shaver because his HP plus has no Brave attacks associated with it. It's just a Brave gain. So you have to work around that. You have to be aware that you'll either need to use Brave plus or abilities if he needs to shave on any given turn. You can't rely on that HP plus like most other primary damage dealers can. But other than that, he's a very solid character. His other downside is that he relies heavily on his generic Max Brave Up buff, which means he doesn't play nice with other Max Brave Up characters, such as Y'shtola being the big one right now.
He does have that nice Max Brave aura too, and so he does fit in that like third slot. You know, if you have your main DPS and your main support slash healer, he does kind of fit in that third slot, depending on if you want to do a little extra damage, have some nice auras along with that. He does fit in nice, I think, in that kind of scenario if you can bring ranged and melee damage there. So, Ink, anything to add on Firion?
I'd just say that for sure he's very team specific, but I do really like that his Brave Plus batteries the party.
Yeah.
I do really like characters that have that ability just because a lot of times bosses have all attacks and it's that character's turn right up front. Like, I think this is one of the things that drives me the most nuts about like Rem, let's say, is that there isn't a great way to battery the entire party if she's going right before the boss. And I think other people have had that complaint about Rosa. So it's sort of an interesting thing that even though Firion is a damage dealer, he does have that niche that he can battery the party a bit. And I think
Rosa have prey, though? She can battery the party if she needs to.
Yeah, she can, but only, 5 uses of prey?
Right.
That is true, yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, you tend to want to try to keep that up. I don't have Rosa, despite me trying. So yeah, I guess that's true that she can pray, but you have to burn an ability.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Firion probably doesn't get enough credit for all that he offers. I think a lot of people focus too much on the fact that his skill 2 doesn't overflow without realizing that we have so many supports right now that provide overflow to the party. So
Sidra Games is saying Rose's HP plus does give her back Brave. And doesn't Divine her attack? Doesn't that also give a small Brave?
Her Brave
battery?
attack plus does not battery the party. Her HP attack plus does battery the whole party, including herself. But the Brave gain is typically small enough, even from max Brave, that she is at risk of being broken, is what I found.
Yeah. But
it's just 20% of the damage dealt.
Right.
Yeah,
it is a battery. It'll protect her from small hits, but not big hits.
No, correct. It's not the same kind of battery. All right. Well, thank you, Aero. I think hopefully if you're on the fence about Firion and you have some extra resources, he might be a good character to throw in your party. Well, that does bring us to the next character, the character that you likely pulled on to get if you pulled on this banner, which was the Emperor. Well, first I need to say one little aside. There's been a lot of David Bowie memes going around, not only by me, but by other people as well. And I think it's important to take a moment to mention the late, great Terry Jones of Monty Python fame, who just passed away. For those who did not know, Terry wrote the screenplay for Labyrinth, which featured the late David Bowie as Jareth the Goblin King. So, memes aside, some actually speculate that the Emperor's style was based on Jareth, since Final Fantasy II was being developed shortly after Labyrinth hit the movie theaters in 1986. And now for something completely different. The Emperor of Palamecia, also known as Mateus, the villainous foe of Final Fantasy II, has finally hit DFFOO. He was meta and hyped and meta, and here he is. So he is magic DPS and arguably the most powerful mage we have seen into this point of the game. Now, he's not pure DPS as opposed to somebody like Tifa or somebody perhaps like Sephiroth. He is DPS that relies on a unique mechanic using frame debuffs, also called traps, to do additional damage on his turn and additional damage on enemy turns. So let's briefly look at his kit. If you want to find other videos that go through his kit, our friend Broadway Saiyan, our friend Lids87, Flux Gaming also have videos that go through the kit. Of course, you can find all the information on the Tomberry Troops' beautiful infographics, or you can go get information from Safine's database or Rem's Dissidia DB. So just to quickly go over his skills, because he's a new character. Skill 1 is Beckoning Blast and Flare combo. That is a single target attack. It gives him the frame buff Thirst for Dominion, which is an attack max brave bonus and speed down aura to all enemies. It applies a one-turn framed debuff Trap, Beckoning Blast, which does single target damage and applies speed down. It's worth mentioning all of the traps actually give defense down to the enemy as well, just to note. Skill 2, Thunder Crest and Stygian Swell. There's so many jokes I'd like to make about that. Is his second skill, and that is an area of effect attack. It applies the 2-turn frame debuff or trap, Stygian Swell, to the target of the attack. Stygian Swell does AoE damage, and both Skill 1 and Skill 2 have this unique mechanic where if you use the skill against the enemy with the trap already on them, the trap triggers before the attack. So if you use Skill 1 on an enemy with Beckoning Blast will trigger before the attack. If you use Skill 2 on an enemy with Thunder Crest will trigger before the enemy hits. So this is before the attack actually goes off. This is especially important as we get to his EX ability. He does have an AA.
Mark, just to step in quickly for this. It's not an issue for his EX or his Skill 1, but for his Skill 2, Thundercrest.
Yeah.
Note that using Thundercrest and Stygian Swell while he has on a target that has Thundercrest debuff active does not refresh the turn duration for that trap. So if it's already at 1 turn, he triggers Thundercrest, but it does not refresh it to 2 turns.
Technically, Skill 1 and Skill 2 do not refresh the buffs. Obviously, for the Skill 1, it's only a 1-turn buff debuff, so you wouldn't notice anyway. But yeah.
Yeah, that's the reason I was calling
Yep.
it out specifically for skill 2, because that
So yeah,
has
it will not bump it
two-turn
back up to
debuff.
2. We'll just keep it at 1. That is correct. His AA ability is a standard attack boost to himself when enemies are debuffed. So don't pop it before enemies are debuffed. It's not going to do as much damage or give him the attack boost. His EX ability, called Dreary Cell and Starfall, triggers all traps on the target of the attack. That is important to know that generally the trap is triggered on the person you're targeting, so wherever your cursor is or whoever you're attacking initially, even if with the AoE attack, that's the person who is going to have the traps triggered. It does a powerful AoE attack that is split damage, grants himself the frame buff Hell's Power, which is max brave up and enemy speed down again, rewrites all 3 traps on the target of the attack at 1 turn each. So therefore, following the EX, the target of the attack should have 3 frame trap debuffs: Beckoning Blast, Thunder Crest, Dreary Cell, each 1 turn duration. Before we talk about
I have a quick question, Mark. Sorry to keep interrupting you, but I don't actually have Emperor's Kit, so that's the reason I'm asking you all this. Does Dreary Cell and Starfall apply the traps even if the enemy has no traps on them?
Correct. Regardless of whether or not there are traps on the enemy, it applies all 3 traps.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Without realization, it only applies it to 1 target. Now, we'll get to the realization right now. If you realize it, his EX becomes more powerful, gets more overflow. With 1 ingot, it now grants and refreshes the ability Thirst for Dominion, gives the traps to all targets, and the Emperor begins the quest with both of his frame buffs, Hell's Power and Thirst for Dominion. So obviously that's super important. If you use 2 ingots, his attack and max brave boost, his attack and max brave is boosted, and he has his brave ++ and HP ++ unlocked. They are very underwhelming, but they're better than nothing. And with 3/3, Jury Soul is exceptionally, the EX ability is more potent and has more overflow. And then Jury Cell, the trap, has more potency and overflow. Obviously, he is a DPS character. You want to unlock his full potential if you want to use him. So it may not seem overwhelming to have that 3/3 or even the 2/3, but you really want to 3/3 him. Artifacts on him best are Attack 108 and his C52 star, which is Aspirations of World Domination, which gives him an attack and max brave boost, I believe. Somebody can correct that for me. But it gives him additional boosts as his C50. So a little bit about how to play Emperor. The complicated text aside, I actually think he's a fairly straightforward character. Now, that being said, you could play him very badly by, not targeting any of the characters with the traps and just wasting your turns. He only has, something like 16 ability uses. He does not get free ability uses. He does not have free turns. He does not refresh abilities. So a lot of the other DPSs do that kind of stuff. He doesn't do any of that kind of stuff. He relies a lot on his traps either activating or being reactivated because of his skills. So the easiest way to play him is to apply the traps and you do damage, and then trigger the traps and do more damage, or wait for the traps to be triggered and do more damage. That's really what the Emperor does. The biggest concern actually with the Emperor is because his traps utilize his brave, he can go to 0 brave between turns and potentially be broken. And if you're facing multiple targets who are targeting him, he could potentially die. So you really need to pay attention to that when traps are being triggered and who is targeting the Emperor. Remember that Thunder Crest is an AoE trap, so even if it's applied to one enemy, when it triggers, it does damage to both. So you don't necessarily have to apply it to both characters and then start hitting, because you're just going to waste abilities. So you can apply it to one, trigger it again with the second skill by targeting the same character. And again, to try to have a rotation where you're going to go skill 1 on target 1, skill 1 on target till, skill 2 on target 1, skill 2 on target 2 is going to be a waste of your traps. None of the traps are going to trigger, or they're going to trigger between turns. Your EX is going to be active at that point. You're going to refresh them anyway. So, I would, kind of focus on triggering the traps as best as possible, or make sure they're being triggered in really beneficial ways. Obviously his EX ability plays off a friend Emperor really well. So if you bring a friend Emperor, you do his EX, and the other one brings his EX, activates all the traps, sets new traps. It's ridiculous. The Emperor does, as I said before, doesn't refresh his abilities or get free abilities, so he can run out of abilities fairly quick. But given the fact that he's doing a ridiculous amount of damage, the bosses likely won't survive for that to be a problem. Unless you're bringing him by himself and he doesn't have any support, that's not usually going to be an issue. In terms of party composition, the Emperor enjoys auras and buffs. He carries 2 frame buffs only, so you can do generic buffs as well. Brave regen batteries really do help his traps, because his traps are based off of his current Brave. A tank with taunt or lock, thinking of Zach coming up, I think is going to be really helpful with him. Then you don't have to worry about being the target of attacks. Warrior of Light to some extent could do that. Right now there are other tanks coming up that are going to be helpful. He really doesn't pair well with other debuffers. Now, I mean, you have a character like ultimecia or something that's doing 1 buff or 2 debuffs. That's not a big deal. But if he's paired with characters like Yuffie, characters like, even though Yuffie might not be a big deal, characters like Lilizette, characters like Vincent, who are doing several debuffs, generic debuffs, he's going to push those debuffs off. Because himself, he's doing 3 frame debuffs and 1 generic debuff. So you may be able to find some comps that works, but I'm thinking generally speaking, his partnering with other debuffers is not going to work. I didn't tell you what his sphere does. His sphere does what? Let me pop it up real quick. He gets a E sphere, which is the debuff sphere, and it is debuff success. Attack longer, raises own attack by 10% for 6 turns when inflicting debuff on the target. That's a nice purple sphere that fits really well on him. So a lot of people have already put it on the Emperor, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed to give him that extra attack boost. Just a couple notes as we close here. The Emperor works best versus multiple enemies and will be ineffective against magic resistance and debuff immune foes. If you want to use the Emperor, again, purple him. Anything else, in my opinion, is a waste of resources. I think the Emperor comes in hitting hard. His trap mechanic is pretty fun to play around with. If you're looking for good magic DPS, he's a great option. If you already have a bunch of magic DPS and you're looking to, purple characters like Renoa and Terra, maybe you could skip him. That being said, Emperor did dominate the Chaos era from this point forward in Japan, and was considered by the Japanese players to be one of the strongest characters in this era. Period. Even on Ultima, I think he was rated overall number 2 at the end of this era. So, not that means a lot to me, but just to give you some information. He's great. He's amazing. We had plenty of people do this chaos with just Emperor and Rosa. I think Jin Lee did that. Vayne Novus did that. Fires maybe did that. So he's pretty powerful. Anybody else want to add anything to the Emperor conversation? No comments about his Stygian swell. So
I'd say he's just really extremely solid. So I skipped ultimecia, so having a completely busted, powerful magic attacker now is quite nice. I feel like there's a lot of strategy to his kit, which I really enjoy, because Thundercrest has 2-turn debuff and Beckoning Blast has 1-turn debuff.
Yeah.
You're sort of planning on, you're looking ahead to see like maybe the turn order there, you may not have an opportunity to shave with whoever is there based on it. And so planning that to say, oh, well, I need to drop the Thundercrest debuff because in 2 turns I won't be able to shave that target potentially, or you know that your EX is going to come up if you use your skill 2. You use your skill 2 into EX, that's just a ton of damage if you aim it at the target that has Thundercrest. Yep. So yeah, it's really nice. It's also super fun to use him with Selfie. It's a skill and an HP plus, and his his EX is up.
That is
but you,
nice.
I think, have to take off his speed passive, which I've been playing him without his speed passive, just because otherwise his turn comes up really fast, and I feel like you have to brave attack, which is not bad. If a target is trapped, a lot of times it's much better to use his brave plus, just to make the traps deal more damage. Like that battery or those brave attacks won't go to waste because the traps will deal more damage. So that's certainly a really nice thing. Yeah, I really love the strategy with his kit. I think he's definitely an advanced character to use.
Oh, I was just going to mention, I like what you said about the complexity of his kit. I think it's an easy character to play, but I think it has a skill level that you can grow with as you're playing it. So I think you can get very good at using him. And I mean, that can give you extra turns, extra points, everything else. I think you can pretty much play him easily enough, if you have any sense of how the game works. But yeah, I think he's a character that you can actually spend some time with and actually get much, much better at playing. So, I like that about that. So, yeah.
People are mentioning in chat, of course. The other great thing is how easy he is a win button at the moment. If you have a friend emperor and you're using your emperor, you don't swap emperors ever. Use them both. Keep a battery in the party, and the two of them inside of a summon can burn down chaos and make it feel like Cosmos. It is unbelievable the amount of damage they deal together.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. We've seen in this chaos event that we're going to talk about in a second. I did it in just minutes before the show. I did it in 44 turns. I think I've seen 32 turns. I think Jin or Vayne Novus did it in 32 turns. Again, with the Emperor Friend Emperor tactic, it is ridiculous. And I did mention that as I was going through the kit, the idea of you bring in the friend, you trigger the EX, you follow the EX up with an EX, spam skills too, and it's just doing ridiculous amounts of damage. And it's right now. I mean, now he's in synergy in this event, but he's hitting 99999 5 nines. He's hitting max damage outside of summon. So I mean, with traps, I mean it's ridiculous. The amount of damage this guy does. And it just burns down the characters. So yeah, we all love Emperor.
Aarolei, did anyone want to talk about downsides to Emperor?
I will.
Stupid.
Down with the Emperor. Down with the Emperor.
I hate him.
But in all seriousness, I do have one complaint about him. I have this thing where he takes up a lot of debuff slots, and I don't know. I have this nitpick with characters like this. That's why I don't really like Vincent. That's why I don't really even care. Even if Kefka wasn't a villain, I wouldn't really care for his kit. Emperor suffers from this same problem. So if you're not careful in your team setups, the Emperor can wind up being he's going to take away debuffs you may want on the enemy. And this is something to keep in mind too when the enemy is like something you maybe I don't know. It just bothers me when like you have a bunch of traps or a bunch of debuffs that are framed and they only last for a couple of turns, but sometimes they just they clog, and I just am not a huge fan of things like that personally. And the fact that he's so dependent on a Brave Battery as a damage dealer, I know a lot of them have become that way, but it just feels like with him, it's even more so than other damage dealers, and it's just really annoying to me.
He really does benefit from a Brave Battery, although, we've all been using him with Rosa, and she's not a straight Brave Battery. She has just crazy auras. So, I haven't done Emperor Y'shtola yet, so tell us what some other comps are with that.
It's fun.
Anything else with Emperor? Any questions? I know there were some questions about how you play him. Like I said, I really like what Ink said. I think he is pretty straightforward, but I think you can grow into using him and get more skilled as you get a little bit more practice using him in these events. So definitely in his event, he's just going to burn through that. But out of synergy, and perhaps in tier 6, which many of us will be bringing him to tier 6, as we'll talk about in a minute, you're going to use it. Yeah, let's go to the podcast polls. Kreese, did you have those up? Did you want to talk about what people were doing?
Sure. It looks like Materia Bot's a little quirky because the counts don't look right. A lot of people were planning to pity the Emperor Firion banner, which is pretty exciting. It looks like 26 were planning to pity based on the counts outside the Materia Bot counts. 8 were planning to use gems, 28 were planning to use tickets, and 12, including me, were planning to skip the banner altogether. Out of those, the majority of players who pulled Emperor were planning to 3 out of 3 him. No surprise. He's the massive damage dealer. He benefits heavily from that. With 51 planning to 3-3 him, a couple plan to leave him as EX only, one person planning to leave him as just booked, and no one else just limit breaking his EX plus. A lot of players were planning to just leave Firion's EX as an EX and not book it. Some were planning to book it, and some were planning to 3-3 it, with Aarolei being amongst those.
Very good. So thank you. Yeah, always feel free to jump on our Discord and check out the podcast polls and tell us what you're going to do. If you're going to pull on the banner, what you're going to do, and if you're going to get those EXs, how you're going to invest in them. Obviously, as I said, really, you do want a 3-3 Emperor, and you really do want a 3-3 Furion, I think, too, to make best use of them. That does bring us to the Chaos event, or the Chaos battle in the Emperor event, versus a couple metallic Ferrum Scorpions. There's 3 waves. It's a 3-wave battle. Fairly straightforward. The first wave is trash. The second wave is 2 Iguions, the iguana-looking things that are really pain in the butt. You kill one of them. You kill one of them, the other one gains health and buffs, and they both buff each other and get all kinds of crazy stuff. I hate them. And I never, ever, in any time we've ever fought them, I can never kill these stupid things at the same time. I tried like 6 times before the show to try to kill them.
You got to watch Arrow's video. She did it.
I could watch everyone's video. Everyone else seemed to have no problem doing it. So I just killed them. I don't know.
I've gotten very consistent at killing Iguions, or however you say Iguions, or
Iguions. I don't know.
Ig.
I've gotten very good at it. I've done it with Titus on tier 1 and the Dimensions End. I did it like I don't know. I just constantly do it. I even bring purposely AOE characters when that mid-boss fight even happens because I hate it so much. I hate watching them heal and get a bunch of buffs. It just annoys me on so many levels.
And the
it feels
final
like
wave,
you're just stepping backwards.
Yeah, the final wave is the 2 Scorpions. Their mechanics are pretty straightforward. They can buff themselves pretty good. They have this mechanic where they raise their tail and lower their tail. If they raise their tail, they buff themselves, but their defense is lower. So if you can get them with their tails raised, that's a good time to summon. Their defense will be lower and you'll be able to do a lot of damage. Other than that, they're pretty straightforward boss. They don't have too many surprises. Not that, I mean, it's hard to tell when it's like 35 turns to beat them if they have a lot of surprises. But the majority of folks that I saw beat it in with the 5-9 score, and there's a lot looking on Macnol, MACNOL, Macnol's Call to Arms. Hey, Macnol does a lot of good work for us. He's a good friend of the TCC podcast community. Make sure you go on Reddit, upvote his Call to Arms. The Call to Arms, such good information. We appreciate all the work he does. Give him some upvotes, give him some good comments, show him your support. Sure, submit those videos too. But really good stuff, and I think we're all better for the work that is done by Macnol. But sometimes, not as many upvotes as memes or other stupid stuff. So make sure that that's in there, and we'll be better trying to share that. We always do link the index of the Call to Arms though, so make sure you're checking that out. So the big pretty easy win button with this was Rosa because she's synergy, Emperor because
Emperor seems to be very popular,
and ultimecia. Those three were getting, you know, between 35 and 45 turns real easy, or 30 and 50 turns real easy.
Vanille and Sarah seem to be common thirds with that team too.
Yeah, common thirds, definitely Vanille EX is very popular. There were some budget teams without with Emperor, but without anybody else, which were both Emperor Charlotta, but then somebody used Rem, excuse me, with no realization or just one realization, and Firion without his realization. So those were kind of the budget runs. Yeah, in terms of kind of off the grid runs, I've got one by this guy named Inkwelder. I'm not familiar if we know him. He used Sarah, Sabin, and Setzer to beat that. So congrats, good job.
Showing that Setzer is relevant. Thank you.
You should feel.
You're
that.
very welcome.
Feel
Setzer is absolutely the all-star of. I mean, they work really well together.
Yeah,
but the fact that Setzer's EX comes up so fast, like his freeze neuters the bosses as long as you use it properly. The first run that I did, I was just off score, and he didn't even use an ability in the first 2 waves. He didn't need to. His Brave Plus is the best Brave Plus in the game. And his HP Plus to help avoid getting broken. Setzer is just so much fun to play. I think he's totally undervalued. A lot of people went in to that banner. I think even Mino had said that Setzer was like the weakest one of the banner between Vanille and Sarah. And I feel like it's just doing him disservice because he's an absolute monster in Chaos, even with only 9 abilities.
I'm going to argue that him being the weakest out of that banner just kind of highlights how strong that banner was, because Vanille and Sarah were both really strong. I think it's not so much that Setzer's bad, it's just that all those characters were amazing.
Well, there's another video here by someone on YouTube named Lele. They used Firion, Rem, and Vanille with a Setzer friend. So Aero, that's Aero, Lele on YouTube, Leilee. Yeah, tell us about your Firion clear there, Aero.
It actually took me about 5 tries to get it right, because like the first time I cleared it, but I was over turn count. And then after that, I just kept having some bad luck runs with the Iguions or Iguions or whatever you want to call them. So I had to restart a few times there. And then finally, the 5th try, I knew what to do by then and how to time all the skills. So getting it under 90 turns was possible at that point. Being able to defeat the mid boss is probably pretty key for a lot of teams, that if you're not going to use Rosa and you're not going to use Emperor, because otherwise you're going to wind up going into the final fight at like turn 40 plus, and that's just not acceptable for most teams.
Well, another one of our friends, his name is Strafe, S-T-R-A-F-E. Have to have Strafe back on the show sometime. He did a run without any of the big metas, and what I'm considering big metas would be ultimecia, Emperor, Rosa, Y'shtola. I don't know who else you want to throw in there, but those big ones. He used Sarah, Agrius, and Rem, all fully realized with Emperor Friend. So good job, Strafe. A little outside of the box. And that may be it, really, in terms of there was
a couple of notable ones.
Yeah.
Palad, as a creator, ran Kryl fully realized, so Kryl is still relevant if you want to make her work. Someone carried Gilgamesh through this with ultimecia and Rosa as the 2 buffers there. Someone brought along Leon with Rosa and Setzer. Someone brought along Zidane with Rosa and Yuna fully realized. So there were options. Someone brought along a 70 but not realized Zac with Rosa and Emperor. So Rosa and Emperor really just carried the line. But there were some fun team comps here that I saw.
And this is why I really like the Call to Arms, because generally, especially in missions that you might be able to beat, if you did do the poll and get it pretty easily. There's tends to be people who are going to try to find some interesting compositions, challenge themselves a little bit, and that's a lot of fun. And I think that makes the game a lot more fun. That just makes the community a lot more fun. So thank you, Macnol, Macnol on Reddit. Check him out. Make sure you upvote all his threads, all the Call to Arms threads. He does one for everything. He also has one up for Entropy, or from Dimensions End. A couple of them for Dimensions End. So go check all that out. Submit those videos and just go and like the content and support all those people who are doing the videos too. Like and subscribe all their different channels, including our friends here at the Tomberry Troop and the Crystal Chronicles. So, all right, well, that's enough about the Emperor, if we could ever not talk enough about the Emperor. So let's say goodbye to David Bowie and hello to Ultimate Brothers. This would be our 5th summoning board. Of course, to access it, you need to have your brothers summon at level 20. Then you can access the Ultimate Brothers event. It brings us new passive. I haven't even looked. I know I did look at them. The Tomberry Troop did a wonderful infographic for this. You can check that out to give you a little bit more sense. So, Ink, why don't you kind of walk us through what we need to know about brothers generally before we get into the banners and the farming?
Yeah, sure. So you need brothers at level 20 in order to access the ultimate event. So that's the first thing you'll want to do, is make sure that goes. His new blessing, when you get him to level 30, it's going to raise your team's max brave by 25% when their HP is above 50% now. So the restriction got a little bit lower, down to 50%, given that we take a lot more damage in chaos, and max brave by 25% is awesome. The board has 6 new passives. They are all really pretty good, the ones that got added. So there's the classic one, since it's Earth Element. So you can lower your Earth damage taken for that unit by 10%. You can lower the party's Earth damage taken by 3%. I think that's one of the worst ones. Those always are pretty lackluster. Earth Power-Up increases Earth brave damage dealt by 10%. So that one specifically, Earth damage, there's 3 units that benefit the most from this, and that's Y'shtola is, you can decide. If you want stone to deal more damage, great, pick it. Otherwise, look elsewhere. Aarolei for sure wants it, and Lon and Rain, the twins, also want it. So keep in mind that those 3, you might want to not auto and then just blanket pick them. Do a little bit of thinking as to which ones you want for them. Brothers Boost Up is the 4th one. This is a pretty popular one. When your HP is above or equal to 60% of your max HP, give 5% more max brave to that character. The Boost Guard Up one is a max brave bump of 2% and defense by 10% when HP is greater than 60%. There's another that increases the HP recovered by 5%. So whenever you heal, you get 5% more if your brave is greater than or equal to 50% max brave, which is, so if you're batteried up and you take damage, if you're batteried up and you heal, then you heal more. And then the last one, same thing. When your brave is above 50% max brave, it actually lowers your HP damage by 5%. So sort of like a reverse Charlotta effect type of deal, where you get 5% less HP damage. So typically, for most characters, you're going to want 4, 5, 7. That's the usual one that most people are familiar with. But yeah, if you're for Y'shtola, Aarolei, Lon and Rain, and then also no, I would say that's probably just those 3 that are special, because even Selfie and Ferrum, characters that don't have brave hits, they will like the classic options. And that basically covers brothers.
Cool. Well, we did get a couple banners. Of course, with the summon boards, you have 6 special synergy characters. I'm going to forget what the word special boosted, right? 6 characters.
It is special.
Special boosted. 6 characters that glow kind of pinkish when you jump into the summon board, and that lasts for about 2 weeks. And when you use them, everybody gets double EX, double experience points, so more summon board points every time you run. The entire team does. Of course, all of your characters with double experience just get that. Generally, you don't need to do that. So just like any other banner, we get 2 banners. Each one has 3 characters. Generally, one of the banners is a winner and one of the banners is not. The kind of loser banner, quote unquote, is the banner without any EX realizations, which would be Paine, Zidane, and Shadow. Now, that does come with Paine's full kit and Zidane's full kit, so if you were looking to pick up either of those, they're both solid characters. They're both level 70 Awakening, both very viable in different kind of events. Maybe you need something else for Dimensions End. Maybe you just like those characters. They're not realized, but their full kits are there, and they're usable in Ultimate Brothers summon farming as well. But the banner with the EX realizations and the reworks and the new level 70s are the banner with Bartz, Yuffie, and Galuf. And that is going to bring us to the conversation about our new characters. And I think we're going to start with Inkwelder going over what Yuffie got. Tell us a little bit about the Yuffs and what she brings to the table now that she's realized and gets her EX weapon.
Yeah, everyone embrace the Yuppie. So she is a ranged attacker, utility, heavy utility, and is a battery primarily. Her debuffs are so low that we put it on the infographic, but she's not really a great debuffer in all battles, I'll say. So she did get a rework. Her skill 1 snatch is 7 uses now, which is great. So in addition to the gravity shaving that it does, so it's great at shaving, it also steals a random buff from the target, which is great, similar to Balthier. It also has 4 brave hits and an unconditional HP attack with 120% overflow. So if your enemy is gaining buffs or gains brave a lot, you might want to make sure that you save uses of this. You're going to hear that a little bit. Her skill 2 is I don't need this, also 7 uses, so really nice that she has 14 total abilities. It obviously debuffs targets. It's just 10% for all skills. It's really not very impactful, but they're there, and she can push buffs off with that if you need to, which is great. It also transfers her debuffs. This has always been her niche. She was really popular in the 60s Heretic when she got awakened, because she can throw her debuffs onto all the enemies, and she extends them by 5 turns, so they stick around. The ability also now has 2 AoE brave hits into a split HP attack that overflows 150%. And she batteries her allies for 50% of their max brave, and also removes a debuff from each of them. So sort of like a mini Asuna. Her kit's really weird. It's sort of like a kitchen sink. This skill also grants her unique buff that she's always had, which is perfect. I'm going to keep doing that because I don't know how else to say that without being awkward. And so this skill also, you have to pay attention to how it's used. If the boss is inflicting debuffs on you, you're going to want to save this. You also need it to keep her buff up, her unique buff. So you have to be really careful at how you use Yuffie's kit, because all of her skills have a lot of utility to them. And so depending on what your boss is doing, you have to pay attention to which skills you have to be a little bit more sparing in using. Her new EX is Gauntlet. 6 AoE alternating, so sort of like Kate Sith's Toy Soldier or Kuja's Ring Holy. So 6 alternating hits into a single target HP attack that overflows 120%. And it has a 50% splash, which is pretty nice. It is a slow recharge, and you'll see why in a second. So it gives her Water God's Blessing buff for 6 turns. That buffs the party's attack and max brave as an aura. And so all in with all of her, if you bring her to level 70 and everything, she gives 50% attack, 50% max brave to the party, which is a really nice, solid aura. The EX also inflicts to all enemies a debuff, unique debuff called No Cheating. And No Cheating prevents enemies from gaining buffs, and they also can't battery themselves. They can't do any brave gains. They can still hit you and take your brave away. So they can still do that, but they can't do either of those things. So Yuffie basically has, and I always call her Yuffie, so sorry. I don't get Yuffie. But she's got a lot of mechanics to her kit that makes her pretty difficult to use optimally. You just have to pay attention to which abilities you need to save. Her AA is all brave copy. You point it at an enemy, and whatever that enemy's brave is, she batteries the party for that amount. It doesn't reduce their brave or anything like that. She just copies their brave total and batteries the party. If you bloom it, you get 3 uses of it. So that's pretty nice if you have the extra bloomstones. It's a really nice battery if you need it. And at C70, when you bring her to Crystal 70, which if you use her, you probably will, because we have had not many viable red characters to like ever get low on red crystals. So if you do, she gives the party max brave plus 10% for 4 turns. Not bad. Moving into one thing that I absolutely have to mention: if you pull for Yuffie and you don't get her 15, leave it. Your OCD might trigger. It might bother you that you're seeing a blue rectangle. It is the absolute worst. If you want to know what it does, it gives Yuffie a buff. All it does is a buff of max brave plus 25% for a single turn.
Yep.
And that is it.
It's so bad.
It doesn't increase the potency of Snatch. It doesn't do anything else but buff her for a turn. So, I will say one thing that's useful, you can consider it, is that if she is going first and you don't realize her fully, then she's not starting with any buffs, and she does have a number of buffs and auras that trigger off of her buffed. So yeah, there's that small thing, but honestly, this is the worst 15 CP in the game. Please don't waste power stones on it.
I mean, couldn't you just use her skill 2 and actually get few perfect before she does anything?
Yes, you could. But a lot of times that's a trash wave, and you don't want to waste I don't need this on a trash wave generally. But yeah, that's true. You could do that. If you realize her EX, I'll run through it real fast, just because a lot of people did do budget runs for her in Entropy in various levels. So it's worth it to decide where you might want to bring her to. 0-3 is 150% overflow. 1-3 is her stats up, so that's obviously a good one for attack and max brave. At the start of the quest, for 2 out of 3, she starts with perfect and Water God's Blessing, so she's going to have her auras and her buffs all up, which is great for longevity. And then at 3-3, her EX goes to 9 hits. That's a weird number. So one thing to note is that when you have alternating hitting abilities, whoever you aim at gets hit last.
Right.
So if it's ABC and you aim at C, it's going to hit A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C. But if you just have AB and you aim at it, it's actually going to hit B first because it's an odd number of hits. So yeah, pay attention to sort of break orders when you need to with that 9-hit type ability. And then in addition, it also increases the splash to 100%. It unlocks her Brave ++ and her HP ++. Her Brave ++ is like Kate Sith's. It's a really nice battery. It batteries a party for 20% of max Brave. Even if you don't have 3-3, it still batteries the party for 20% max Brave. It's got 2 hits to it. HP ++ is like Clouds. It's got a Brave gain into a Brave hit into an HP attack that overflows 120%. So Yuffie can sort of sit back on her skills if you need her to save her other abilities. Her Brave ++ is really nice if you've used Kate Sith at all. If you fully realize her and purple her sphere is sort of awesome, especially if you have Emperor or Sarah or anyone that debuffs a lot. Attack and max Brave +10% for 3 turns. So it's a pretty short turn duration whenever you debuff a target. So you don't want to use this on, you'd want to consider it if you haven't given ultimecia her own sphere and she only debuffs on her skill 2. So you have to be a little bit careful who you give this to, because it's only 3 turns long that it goes, and they may burn through their this 3-turn rate pretty quickly.
So what you're saying is give it to Cloud, because it'll work great there.
Yeah, sure.
So I didn't realize there was debate on how you pronounce, obviously being the master of all Final Fantasy character pronunciation. I didn't realize there was any debate. Apparently there is, looking in chat, on how you pronounce Yuffie's name. I'm pretty sure in Advent Children they refer to her as Yuffie, right?
We don't have anyone here to confirm it or deny it, so I think it is Yuffie too, but who knows?
Sorry, I'm going to call it Yuffie.
You can call it whatever the hell you want. I also call kind of annoying.
Sabin.
So.
I'm a Yuffie kind of person myself.
Thank you, Aaro. I can always
Fantasy 1414 is saying it was in Kingdom Hearts 1 as Yuffie, but I think it was also Tita, or what was it, Titus in Kingdom Hearts 1?
Yeah,
so
Kingdom Hearts
not the greatest marker.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts.
Can we get a ruling on whether Kingdom Hearts anything is canon for anything Final Fantasy?
Yeah, I don't think so. Well, hey, if Kingdom Hearts is not canon, World of Final Fantasy is not canon.
It was Titus in Kingdom Hearts 1? Okay.
I just want to throw that in there. So if we're throwing Kingdom Hearts out for pronunciation guides, we got to throw out World of Final Fantasy, because I hate people throwing that at me all the time. Well, in World of Final Fantasy,
well,
they say this.
Kingdom Hearts was also where they first made Aerith, and that has been held on to since.
No, don't send me your World of Final Fantasy is the best Final Fantasy game hate. I'm sorry. I love it. It's great. Let's all have chibi whatever for breakfast.
So the last thing I want to say about Yuffie, I'll alternate just to trigger people. Last thing I'll say about Yuffie is she absolutely can throw max HP down. There was a rumor that was flying around, especially it was on Reddit, that people thought that it didn't work for max HP down. If the boss is not immune to it, she can throw it back. She has duos in Entropy 3 with later characters. She does it with Leo. Obviously, Leo's broken. But the fact that she has a skill that, if used properly, can deal 2 to 3 million HP damage on one ability, that's pretty awesome. It is niche. Entropy 3 is popular for her for that reason. She can throw back the Marilith's debuff. She also has a great run in Sync's Lost Chapter because they also drop it. So it is not common that it happens. But when it does, it is just the most glorious thing
that
ever.
Was up for debate. There were people using it in Heretics 7 months ago, to get through that. They used Yuffie to throw back that max HP down, because Kefka was on a wave. They take that debuff, carry it to the last wave, and then throw that back at the final wave to just wreck them.
Yeah, people were debating it, saying that it wasn't relevant anymore.
Max HP down is hilarious when it works right.
Especially in the Entropy 3 run, they use it when it first happens to basically turn the Chaos bosses into Cosmos bosses. Then they leave the Marilith alive long enough for it to do it again and drop the max HP down on Yuffie again. And then they basically burn skills on wave 4 to quickly move to the last wave with the annoying Kraken and the Tiamat. And then they throw it on them, summon, and basically burn one down. I mean, it really turns Chaos to Cosmos when it happens. I am very excited to do it because my Yuffie is going straight into Entropy 3 and resetting that and freeing up Locke and Sarah. So
very nice.
I'm excited. Yeah,
she is very niche because that's a very rare debuff to see. But when it happens, she can really destroy a boss fight.
Yeah, and in general, you're using Yuffie to counter bosses. So if you really enjoy screwing over the most annoying of bosses out there, then she's probably a good character for you to pull on. But if the boss doesn't really have anything annoying that that matches with her kit, you're really not going to bring her as much. So just keep that in mind, that she's sort of like a very situational tool that you'll pull out for the most random of boss battles that are frustrating you. And there's certainly some credit due for that. So
there's been a couple questions in chat about this. Note that the max HP down debuffs are percentage based, and Yuffie extends the debuff duration when she reapplies it back at the enemies, which means that you can usually kill something in the duration or do enough damage that it makes up for any percentage loss, because when they get their HP back, they don't get back whatever was taken from them in the process. So you still do substantially more damage during that max HP down period than you would otherwise.
It is amazing.
So
boss has 3 million HP. You can take away 1.5 million.
yeah, personally, I think she's a different kind of utility unit than what we've seen with maybe Setzer and Agrias. And I feel like if you're kind of lacking either, Yuffie or Bartz are starting to look a little more appealing. I would definitely consider either of them to purple, because gravity is always very handy on its own, but the utility either of them brings is always very welcome as a third slot in a team.
She's very interesting. She's a lot more niche than some of the other utility characters that we've talked about and will talk about. But when her niche comes up, she just destroys the fight.
Yeah, think about Celis against Ifrit Chaos.
Yeah. That brings us to the other character on the banner, who also has some interesting history with his name, whether it is Bartz or Butts, or if you're watching the Final Fantasy V anime in the English dub, Bats. So, Chris, tell us about.
I've never heard the Bats one.
Yeah, no,
okay.
no, just a little bit of history. True. If you watch the English dub of the Final Fantasy V anime, and if you haven't ever watched the Final Fantasy V anime, you are missing out on a unique experience. Now, the Final Fantasy anime series, Unlimited, also an interesting experience. But many years before that, there was a Final Fantasy V, Legend of the Crystal, something like that. But it's based on Final Fantasy V, like a sequel, like the Final Fantasy IV had the After Years. Well, it's kind of an After Years for Final Fantasy V, and it is bonkers, straight 80s, early 90s Japanese animation. I mean, it is way out there, and they pronounce Bartz's name as Bats, and Exdeth's name as Exodus. So there you go. Good times. Yeah, no, I live Final Fantasy, so I know I own all of that stuff. On
yeah,
VHS.
I actually rented that movie or the show or whatever from Video Warehouse of all things back as a teenager, back when like they were one of the only places to even rent out anime. Yep. Because it was still pretty darn niche at the time. So yeah, I love Video Warehouse.
That's a tough one. That's a tougher one to find. But you can certainly get that on Amazon. But I think you can probably watch that on YouTube if you look in the right place. So. But yeah, Final Fantasy Unlimited. I love Final Fantasy Unlimited, the anime. That's I own that as well. Anyway, Chris, what's Bartz do? He gets some stuff.
He is kind of like other characters I've enjoyed this month in that he is a walking buff aura. He supplies a lot of buffs to the party for very little buff slots. In fact, he supplies fewer buff slots than most of the characters because almost all of his auras are based on just passives rather than buffs. The only aura characteristic he supplies to the party based on a buff is now tied to his new unique buff called World Traveler, which increases party overflow limit. Otherwise, everything else is passive, which is pretty cool. It just requires him to be buffed constantly, and he's good to go. And also have his World of Illusion passive and have good artifacts, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Bartz hasn't changed much since the last time we spoke about him. He's gotten some basic general life improvements to his basic abilities. Double Hand now always triggers an HP attack, doesn't require the HP or the Brave conditional to trigger the HP attack. It hits 3 times instead of 2. Missile always triggers an HP attack as well. And that's about it. Buffs now, his generic buffs now last a little longer, but that's really it. His big changes come from his EX Plus and his Awakening. His Awakening gives him a new additional ability where he can increase party max brave and attack very slightly for 5 turns if you fully bloom and Crystal Strength 70 him. His Crystal Strength 68 gives him slightly more party buffs, but again, it just stacks on top of all the other auras he's applying. The big change is that his EX ability gets better. He gets better stats. Generally, Ayanuki, his EX ability becomes a better button to hit. It hits more often. It has Brave Overflow now. It deals splash damage. It hits harder. It applies the World Traveler buff that I mentioned before. Aside from being a party overflow limit increase, it is also a personal attack bonus. So he wants to keep that up. And the last thing he gets is an HP plus that allows him to battery the party based on HP damage dealt, but it's only a single hit. So big pluses, he's still the big walking aura that deals damage that he used to do. He still has gravity hits, which means he shaves a percentage of brave on the target per attack for missile and brave plus. He has the strongest gravity attack in the game at 80% gravity with missile plus, which is just ridiculous. If you need to shave a large amount of gravity and you're worried about defense, Bartz is going to do it. He supplies a large amount of party battery with most of his abilities. Missile, Ayanuki, and Brave Plus all are party batteries. HP Plus is a party battery. It's very, very helpful. He's just a very general all-around character. If you already liked his kit, what he did, he just does it better now. He works in the Chaos era. If you didn't like his kit, if you thought he was too simple, because he just does damage while working as the walking stat aura character for the rest of the party, it doesn't change your opinion. He just does it a little better now. And I think that's really it. He's just a better version of himself.
He's the better Butts.
Yep,
better Butts.
I have already 3-3'd mine, but I have not had the chance to play with him yet. But I am very, very excited. I have a long track history of using Bartz, even when he was deemed very bad. I C70'd him back at Wave 2 of the C60 era. So just to give you an idea, I've used him a long time. And he has a long history with me as well on my channel. So if you're very interested in seeing the growth of Bartz, I got a lot of videos on that on my channel, so feel free to go check it out.
One thing I want to last mention about Bartz is that he's kind of tied to his Crystal Strength 50 passive and artifacts for that passive, but he also really, really needs that attack bonus artifact. So he's a little harder to grind artifacts for. He's not quite as bad as cursed artifact characters, but he's getting close to that realm. So if you want to use him, keep that in mind, that he does require investment on the artifact and to make him the most useful character that you can.
I've got 1.5 perfect artifacts on Bartz. Maybe I'll invest in him.
I have 6-star simple mastery, but I do not have any good secondaries for those. So
I have 6-star.
My Bartz is in decent shape.
I have 6-star simple mastery, 1 with attack 108 and 1 with attack 65. So
I hate you.
Close. So close. But yeah, so
my
those
Barrett just got his CS 50 6-star before the Rosa event start, or the Rosa artifact grind started.
Yeah,
so I'm in terrible shape for this stuff.
My Emperor and my Rosa still have nothing after thousands of arts here this week. So thankfully we got a few more days on the Emperor event to grind that co-op. So let's talk about the fight now.
I want to also mention, before we move on from Bartz, he does have a couple drawbacks in that he shaves a lot of Brave, but he doesn't necessarily do a massive amount of damage to supplement that Brave shave.
Yeah.
His Brave plus and HP plus are tied to a single Brave attack, which means he needs a Brave battery or a large Brave regen source in order to deal damage turn to turn. His Ayanuki is fast plus recharge speed. It's the fastest in the game. That's still, I think, and Aarolei can correct me if I'm wrong, it's still like every 3 turns if you're using Brave plus or HP plus every turn, right? And if you're using abilities, it's every other turn.
That sounds about right from what I remember experience-wise.
So he's not going to be doing as much damage as raw DPS characters, so you need to supplement that somewhere. You got to be careful. And he also only has a certain number of uses of missiles, so he can shave a lot of Brave very quickly, but he can't do it turn to turn to turn, so we need someone to help him with that.
So we're not going to talk about the Chaos fight because we haven't had time to do it, the Brothers Chaos fight. We do get a Cosmos and a Chaos fight eventually after you unlock them. But let's talk a little bit about the farming. Now, 2 basic things. First of all, the special boosted characters, who's the best to use, and I guess even before that, the fact that apparently we got the nerfed version of Brothers. So does anybody have a sense of what that really means for us, what Brothers used to be versus what they are here currently? Because this was considered...
I think I can probably take that.
Yeah, this was considered a fairly... inconvenient summon board to grind in the Japanese timeline. So yeah, Ink, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, this was either worse or as bad as Shiva for JP. We will not have that problem, thankfully. So basically the main differences, well, Brothers in general, they start as 2 characters. There's no difference pre or post nerf. Or we'll just call it JP versus GL, just because we never had a non-nerfed version of Brothers. So it's the same in both for the pre. You're going to want to hit whichever brother is further back in turn order, because you really don't want them to get a turn if you can help it. And so that's why you'll usually want to swap for your friend in the first wave, unless you're like using some pretty powerful team that can deal 150,000 HP damage to one of the targets. It's not that much, honestly, but you want to do it before they take an action, because they do have long animations. When you deal 150,000, they fuse, and this is where the big difference comes in. So they fuse into one. They hop on the little brother hops on the big brother's back. It's adorable. They have 100,000 less HP, down to 600,000, and they also don't have their recast gauge max. Similar to Leviathan, when you went into Leviathan farming. So the cool thing about that is, if you remember Leviathan had 700,000 HP. This combined fused version has 600,000 HP. So once they fuse, they're going to be easier to kill than Leviathan, which is great. That's the big difference. That's generally the only difference, is the recast change and the HP. But those make such a big difference because it affords you an extra turn to either delay them more, kill them, or summon. And so the one thing that I will say with this fight, because I did do as much testing as I could while everyone else was talking, is the best farmer for sure. I think it's undisputed is Yuffie for sure. She can farm with her base 35, but if you're farming with her base 35, which is great for people because you can just weapon token her and you don't even have to use any power stones. but you need to have the right friends, and you have to use the right strong carriers with your party. So your strong carriers either have to delay or have to launch in order for base 35 Yuffie to work, if you're going to use someone like a Setzer or a Tifa friend. Cloud is for sure the safest option for most people because he can finishing touch twice, fully charge the Chocobo summon. You can go into summon and burn them down. And that definitely is something, and you can also paralyze them if you really needed to on Cloud's last turn. So there's, I think for people, if you're wondering which friend to throw up, that's a terrible combination of words. If you're wondering which friend support you should, I would say whoever you feel most confident in. I would say generally it's going to be Setzer or Cloud. Doing testing with Tifa, she was just a little bit awkward in trying to get a max launch set up so that I could summon in time. So yeah, you do have to be a little bit careful with that. But I was farming with base 35 Yuffie just fine. The battles are pretty fast, actually. There's no like Brave Poison like Ifrit. The combination of them fusing is not as dramatic as Shiva. Yeah, it's really similar to like farming Ramu or Leviathan. So it's pretty fast. And I think that with the point change that we get, which I'll talk about in a second. I want to cover the other people. So Bartz probably needs EX plus if you're going to farm with him. You can try him with his base EX. He doesn't work with his 35. I tried it with his 35, and it's super awkward. You basically have to have a Cloud friend. That's the only option. Maybe a Dark Knight Cecil friend would work. And even then, the damage is so low, the battery is not good enough to deal 600,000 damage in that second phase. So yeah, I think you'll need his EX for sure. And then I did try Paine. So I have Paine MLB, and she does work, but she needs Cloud. She's not going to work with Setzer, and she's not going to work with Tifa. So yeah, I think for sure, talk to your friends or check on Discord what people need the most, who they're using, because if they're not using Yuffie, they're probably going to need Cloud Friend to get that summon up and running. And if you are using Setzer friends a lot, then don't even bother with Chocobo. You're never going to charge it. So you may as well bring Shiva to give everyone the speed up and the damage up. So yeah, that's basically the farming. It's really not bad. Thankfully, this nerfed version, we will not experience any amount of pain. Fantasy is asking Cloud or Tifa. For sure, put Cloud. I don't think that Tifa. I know that I had put it on the graphic, and I even put it in my follow-up post that Tifa would be sort of a middle ground unit. The fact is that she wastes one turn with her self buff with Battle Cry, and even though her EX does a ton of damage and launches and delays, and that's great, Cloud is just more consistently a safer option because you basically have the Paralysis Edition, and then even if they do use their ultimate and they buff themselves, it's a Brave damage reduction. It's probably not as bad as ultimecia Chaos's Brave reduction buff that they get, but it's bad enough that it'll basically ruin your run. It's also a really long animation to watch them play rock, paper, scissors, which is very cute for sure. So, maybe you'll get it once, but hopefully not, because it takes a while. So yeah, I think Cloud Friend, if you don't have Setzer, is for sure the next best option. And if you just want to help people the most possible, then Cloud is definitely a really safe choice because he's fast and they won't get their recast off, and you'll get to summon. And the runs take most of my runs with just base Yuffie 35 were taking like a minute 10, so you can shove a lot in there. You just have to deal with loading times outside of that. But I was timing it. Paine is up around 2 minutes, so yeah, be aware of that. Yeah, that's most of what I've got on Brothers.
How would you compare it to previous summon board grinds? Like, is it faster than other grinds, slower than other grinds? Where would you put it in the list?
Well, so thankfully, we only have to do, I did crunch numbers that I mentioned, where you're only going to have to do 140 runs if you're using a triple. And at that rate, you're probably doing, let's arbitrarily say that if you're farming relatively efficiently, you're getting anywhere from 12 to 15 runs per book. You're gonna fly through that pretty quickly. It's not going to take you very long with the points. So I think no matter what length of battle, I think it's comparable to Leviathan, just because you do have to deal 750,000 total HP damage, which is a little bit more than Leviathan. So it'll take a little longer than Leviathan, but you do have, thankfully, the extra points that we're getting. You get 900 points if you use a super synergy, or a special boosted rather, along with a 3x book. So yeah, and for anyone that's thinking, oh, it's fine, I'll just use the 2x books. I mean, you're talking about running like twice as many battles or more, potentially, just to get treasures for everybody. And yeah, I'd say your time is valuable. So if you can, use your 3x experience books. I think it's worth it. So yeah, I think the grind is probably comparable to Leviathan.
Yeah.
So similar to Leviathan, except now we're getting more points. Sounds good.
Yes, and
yeah.
Squex Joshua popped in, and we do thank all his work as our community manager from the company. But we also do appreciate those early quality of life changes, bonus points, the actual grind a little bit easier, all of those things. So early Mog Pass, if you're still with us, Josh. Early Mog Pass, buy it tomorrow.
Look, we're not going to be asking for too much. We're just going to ask for Joshua to slip hints in who's the global first. 2 or 3 days before he's supposed to release it.
Disrespect of Scott aside, seriously.
Who does not want Scott?
I want Scott. You
who
kidding?
Is Scott?
The fact that you don't know who the heck Scott is. Arrow, defend Scott. Defend your boy Scott.
I mean, he's cool because you get to play him in FF2 Game Boy Advance version.
I was gonna say
Scott goes to hell and defeats Hell Emperor, right? In the afterlife or heaven.
I thought it was the heaven one.
Yeah, he's in heaven. He's in the afterlife.
Why
right?
would Scott go to hell?
Well, right. No, but there's the group in the afterlife and the group in the real world, right? Spoilers. Oh crap. Man, yeah. I forget.
The game's only been out for 30 years.
I try not to give spoilers.
But this version's actually been out for less time because it never got released until the Game Boy Advance version in like the early 2000s. But still, you got about easy 15 years.
So we will come back
where Scott completed everything and made us all look like we were dragging our asses.
Yeah. Scott's awesome. We love Scott. Yeah.
Yeah, but seriously, the grind, like the fact that Squex decided to nerf brothers for us up front, shows how much they care about us. Because everyone really doesn't like summon farming, but they love the rewards that they get out of it. And the fact that they dropped this, and they totally didn't have to, but they did. They're saving so much of our time to focus on all the other content. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's one of the nicest quality of lives they have ever given us. Next to like increasing the rate of 35s dropping on banners, I think was another really big like blessing. I think this is up there with that.
So I do also have to say something else to Joshua. Sometime last week, I think on the announcement of the Ultimate Summon boards, there was some thing on Twitter on the official Square Enix Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia Twitter account, which is at Dissidia FFOO. Make sure you follow them for all those good updates. We also share those on our at TCC Podcast Twitter account. But there was a comment about, Summon Bard farming, and Joshua said he had mastered all his boards, and I made a comment offhandedly about, okay, where's the screenshot to prove it? And sure enough, Joshua came back on and did share the screenshot to prove that he had mastered all of the summon boards at that point, all 4 of them, for all of the characters in the game. So congratulations, Square Enix Joshua. He's not a noob or a casual. He is at the committed level of
it's a cool cat, as he says in
a cool cat.
Chat right now. And I'm just going to mention that I'm going to be disappointed if he does not have 5 summon boards mastered for Kefka next Monday.
Yeah,
during the next community stream. I want to see that 5 summon board Kefka in the co-op.
That's right. We want to see that brothers mastered. Get on it. Hope you don't have anything to do this week. Master out those boards. Much easier now, thanks to the quality of life updates. So
he says he's a more professional casual. That's okay.
Yeah, he doesn't have
Look,
that gold. Doesn't have that gold plate.
Orders together. I have no problem with that.
Doesn't want to throw it in anybody's face, right? We all play the game differently. Good job. So, but yeah, so thank you. We do thank Joshua and Glacy, and we will talk about that stream coming up here in a second. But first, we will talk about the Chaos event next week once we have some time to do it. But first, we also got an additional, or the next tier of Dimensions and Entropy. So, of course, to get to Dimensions and Entropy, you have to, do the previous ones. Or do you? Can you just go into Dimensions and Entropy? Do you have to do Pathos first?
No, it requires requirements on having a certain number of characters fully awake,
right.
I believe.
That's right. Regardless, you probably already know that. So there's a new tier. It is tier 6. The kind of basics behind that is they are melee resistant. You really do need healers and debuff evasion because you have to fight not 1, but 3 Malbros. The lunatic weedlets and the lunatic mother weeds, which are variations of the Malbro enemy. So you fight. I think you fight a wave.
Do we want to let Mino in to talk about this tier?
Oh, do we want to let Mino in to come? Yeah. So hey, Mino got his gold plate already because that's why he was on stream. So yeah, Mino, if you want to jump in and tell us about this wave, go ahead. Welcome, Mino.
I'm here.
Hey.
It saves Ink from having to talk about it, so I'm sure he's fine with that.
Yeah, tell us about tier 6.
I'm relieved.
I'm double drunk because I didn't expect to be on today, so I was drinking extra hard, and I don't have work tomorrow. So let's see if I can muddle through this real quick.
But
okay,
you did beat it already.
Yeah.
So.
And no, it's a crass move to talk about the TCC versus Tonberry Troop War, but Tell and Vayne are also done. Tell says there's 3 Tonberry golds, so I'm guessing Dreamy's also done. I don't know. But the point is, a bunch of us have finished while listening to the episode. I mean, Tonberry Troop did this great write-up that I definitely used to prepare for beforehand before going in. So you've got 2 trash waves this time, which I think is rare because I think all the tiers before this have been 3 trash waves, 2 bosses, right, guys?
It's usually been 5 waves per entropy tier, so it's usually been 3 waves of trash interspersed with 2 boss waves in between.
Right. Ink's linking the their guide in the chat, and then I think we'll try to pin it up in our Discord for a while this is up.
I am putting it kind of, holy shit, if I don't break the document into our list of important things in the outline.
Oh, right. Special shout out to Black Cloud Strafe, who also helps Tonberry Troop a lot. And I think he helped extensively with their guide. He's always around our Discord to help people as well.
And he has a video about Tier 6, I believe, as well, kind of a guide looking ahead at it. So check out his YouTube.
Perfect. So first wave is a trash wave. Then you go into Locke's boss, which is the Phoenix that revives. Don't be fooled like I was. I thought it was a trash wave at first because it had so little HP and did barely anything. And then once you kill it, the real fight starts. You know, it starts taking double-digit damage from Lena, and it was pretty terrible. It starts actually hurting you. But it's basically Locke's boss ramped up, so you can't skip any of the mechanics. That's pretty basic. We all know what the Dark Phoenix does at this point, which is it has an HP poison, has a bunch of debuffs, does AoE Brave gain into AoE HP attacks. So that's a pretty basic boss.
It's the Phoenix from Diablos when we got to unlock Diablos. The lock one is purple.
Wait, which came first, Diablos or Lock? Because they have
Diablos.
Okay, so it's the Diablos boss, but both of they're the same though, right? They have like the same move set and the same mechanics.
They're similar but slightly different in attacks they use, but it's nuanced. They are very comparable.
Mm-hmm. See, now that Ink brings it up, he's right. I could have sworn the Lock Phoenix was the one that had the HP poison, but I think the Diablos one had that as well, right? So it is the Diablos Phoenix, I believe. And then that's followed by Wave 3, which is another trash wave, into Wave 4, which is Kuja's boss. And boy, did I hate this wave, because I think when Kuja's boss came around, most of us...
Is it 2 copies or 1?
No, it's the 1 copy. So it's the giant mother. They don't call it a Marlboro. What is it? You know how she summons the little seedlings. Mother weed. There you go. It's the mother.
Boss. Okay.
Yeah, it's the mother weed that summons the 2 little seedlings constantly.
Which means it also gives itself HP regen if you let it sit around long enough. Okay.
Exactly. So it's exactly the Kuja boss amped up, except that I'm pretty sure we all cheesed the Kuja boss the first time around, because I remember nuking the hell out of it so it couldn't do anything. I remember Kuja plus Kuja friend and summon. This time you actually have to deal with its mechanics, and it's really, really terrible. The seedlings only have 2 attacks. I believe they have Crunch or Munch or whatever, which is a huge brave attack. If they break you, they're going to shoot up to about 13k plus brave. So the next turn, if you don't burn that, they will kill you. That's all the seedlings do. But while they're up, Mother Weed is constantly buffing them. As Kree said, is giving herself HP regen to stall. It's really terrible. Depending on your setup, if you just kill one of the ads and leave a second one up, Mother Weed will not resummon the ads until both are dead. So you can stall like that, but it is hard because I brought a bunch of AoE damage, and I'm sure everyone else will, so eventually you're going to kill both ads. As Ink said in the Tomberry Troop infographic, killing Mother Weed ends the wave, so you can ignore the ads just like the bombs in Tier 1 if you're good enough on that single target focus. But otherwise, ads you just need to control their brave, and Mother Weed is just stalling, healing, and buffing herself and her ads until you can kill it. So that is a big turn waster. I think that's, the preliminary chat on Discord is that seems to be the biggest pain in the ass wave, I think. And then you go into the final wave. You have Gilgamesh's boss plus the Super Marlboro, and I don't remember where the Super Marlboro comes in from first. But basically you have Ultima Weapon, who is same moveset, basically will buff itself. When it buffs itself, it is huge damage resistance. So I think it's physical resistance and magic resistance, which is a huge pain in the butt. And like its behemoth counterparts, it'll start battering itself and summoning meteors to wipe out your group as much as possible. The common strat I've seen here is to focus Ultima Weapon first and summon right before it's targeting itself to buff its resistances, and then spend everything you have to burn it. The Greater Marlboro is very simple. That's the bad breath, really bad breath type of Marlboro. If you have debuff evasion or debuff cleanses, it's really just wasting turns, because bad breath does no brave damage. You can cleanse it or evade it. It's a wasted turn, and then it'll just keep trying to spam really bad breath, or use the tentacle HP attack if it has enough brave. So it's a very basic one. It's only there to force debuffs on you and force you to deal with debuffs. Both are pretty squishy. Just make sure you kill Ultima Weapon before it gets its resistances up, and then the rest of the fight should be a breeze. And the final takeaway is, I cannot imagine this fight without ability to deal with debuffs. I know people have powered through it with massive DPS, but 3 of the 5 waves just pile debuffs on you and shove off your buffs and just really hinder you. It's a 125 turn fight, so it's really tight if you can't ignore debuffs. Ink, do you have any more insight since you did the research?
No, I actually didn't do the research. Vane Novus on the team did it. I've been too busy with the infographics, but yeah, he's the one that's been piling all these entropy guides. So no, I don't really. I just think that the debuff evasion was critical unless you basically combine the meta bustedness of like Rosa and Emperor and somebody else.
Yeah.
I'm planning myself to use Emperor, Selfie, and Celis, which I think was a confirmed like team that JP did off of that that guide that we released. So I'm just going to do that to make it easy. What team did you use, Mino?
I used Emperor, Setzer, and Lena, and that got through pretty comfortably. Vane here used... I'm checking some of the teams in chat. Everyone went with some debuff evasion. I see a couple of Afmals. I see a couple of Lenas. Of course, Yuna was a big pick. Vane Novus went with Emperor, Rosa, Yuna. So I feel like this was definitely made for Yuna, definitely made for Emperor. If you have either or both, this should be a walk in the park.
Tritalk did it with Afmal and Rosa and Setzer, so just FYI.
Nice.
That's a pretty neat team.
The theme of these entropies, as we're seeing, is have 1 or 2 of the most recent characters that released this month. It's definitely tailored towards them. So,
Ramu, bring the Ronzo clan pride by bringing Ramu.
Hey, you know what?
Good job.
Somebody do this with Kimari. He's probably good for... There's a lot of AoE HP attacks going out. Maybe...
Is Kimari melee, though? Or is he ranged?
I think he's
ranged.
ranged.
Yeah.
That's what I get for not knowing his kit.
Yeah.
Because
Who knows his kit? Let's be fair.
I mean, I think we can assume all spear users are ranged, right? Sid's mostly ranged too, right? Arrow?
He's
Not
all
all
ranged.
Yeah, they all spear users are ranged, I believe.
So
you did
one
clear it.
one thing to consider, just because like Telly put using like ultimecia, Rosa, Selfie maybe, but one thing that you should try to be aware of with Entropy is if you can do the level without using 2 healers, that's probably a good call, because healers are in such short demand. Like I was trying to figure out how to shuffle my roster to free Ishtola, because she's sitting in wave 4 with Lena, and I don't have any healers besides like a 35 CP Ico that I can use outside of Selfie, who I'm planning to use for 6. It's really hard to free, and I've pulled a lot of supports, and you start to run out of healers. So if you can not double up on healers, that's generally a good strategy. And if you ever need to figure out which entropies you want to redo, you probably should redo ones that have 2 healers on them. They're the most in demand.
Right. And as a heads up for this tier, the next tier, and the next story chapter, it's all about dealing with debuffs. This tier is super debuff heavy. The next one is super debuff heavy. And I want to say Yuffie's probably really good for this tier too. If anyone has her and wants to use her to give her a shot. I know everyone's rushing.
She's all ranged and she does transfer debuffs. Yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah, so I really want to pull Yuffie. I've had really bad luck tonight. I think 350 tickets. I only got a Bartz EX, and I'm debating whether I want to use any Brothers tickets to keep chasing Yuffie. But debuff evasion is the name of the game for the next 2 months. Lena's in great demand, Afmao, Selfie, but they're all old characters. Yuffie is very current. Ignis is going to be current, but I don't want to pull for him. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who won't want to. So I think Yuffie is a really good pick if you want to pull on this banner. And I think debuff evasion should be the focus for anyone wanting to complete content going forward.
All right. Well, thank you, Mino, for that. Yeah, we'll keep talking about Dimensions and Entropy every week until we figure out some new ways to do that. So good luck to everybody. Remember, if you have logged on and realized why you don't have a gold plate or a silver plate anymore, well, that's because, yeah, there you go. So
you're not Mino spell good, apparently.
Yeah. You lost it because there's a new tier, so you got to figure that out. But yeah, yeah, a few questions from our host discussion. You can always ask us questions on our Discord. We have a podcast questions poll. So Inkwelder put these up for us. He combined a couple questions from Minyan and Katsufume. If you could have a drink with any Final Fantasy character, who would it be, and which Final Fantasy world city would you share it on? Why? There you go. I know Aero and Ink have some answers for this.
Yeah, I had to think about it because I picked 3 characters in my head, and then I decided to settle on a 4th. I went with Penelo and Lindblom in FF9's world because I think Penelo would appreciate something that feels a little familiar, but at the same time is a little different of a groove. And I also think FF9's world's one of the more chill worlds overall by the end of the game. You know, once you've resolved everything, or even around the mid game. I mean, when you get to Lindblom, it's a really chill place. I also thought Penelo would be a lot of fun just to see what would happen. See, or maybe try to go dance around in Lindblom's Inn or something. I don't know. It just seemed like a good idea. And they seemed less broody than somebody like Firion or Maria or Ramza. So I would prefer that when I have some fun with somebody.
Inkwelder.
Yeah, so I had to think about it just because I had a lot of fun figuring it out. But so I would grab a drink with Celis from FF6, and it would be in the Thunder Plains from FF10, which you're probably thinking the Thunder Plains has to be the worst place to have a drink. However, Yuna sang a concert there in X2, and we all know how great a game X2 was. So figure it's a great place to grab a drink. Celis is a really interesting character. She's not like she's not bland at all. She's definitely a badass, being an ex-general, being an opera singer. She is like a pro fisherman. There's so much to her that I feel like she would have a lot of interesting stories, and the Thunder Plains would keep the conversation flowing, I think, and then she might be able to sing at the same venue as Yuna did. So,
ooh,
yeah.
All right, Kreese.
I would have a drink with Zidane because he is awesome and listens to everyone's complaints, no matter what they are, no matter how small or significant they are. He's just really just a chill dude, and I do it on Cocoon in one of the cities there because Cocoon is just a relatively modern city. It has its problems, but it's very well advanced, and it would be a great place to live.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's got evil space pope, but besides that, it's kind of a nice place.
Evil space pope does not deal with most things on a daily basis.
A nice
Let's just put it that way.
I mean, there's a purge every once in a while, but it's a nice place. No, so my initial thought was it'd be nice to catch an airship show at the castle at Alexandria with the leading man, Balthier. You could have you'd hang out, have a martini with Balthier, maybe go have a night on the town. He's a good guy to hang around with. But then I thought, hey, if you're just gonna have fun, hang out with Zell at the Blitzball arena, because that's a good night, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to just have some hot dogs and beer with Zell while you're watching a great game of the Blitzball? Just good times. Good times all around.
Unless you're in Europe and then it's not hot dogs anymore.
Well, there's hot dogs in Zanarkand. We'd import them.
Europe was bread, right?
Yes.
He loved eating bread.
Yes. Yeah, and in France,
was it bread in?
It is. Yeah, it's in Japan. No, in Japan it was the sweet bread. In France it was crepes, right? Crepe. Yeah.
Crepes?
Yeah, I think it was a crepe, which I love. Crepe.
Look, if it was for crepes, I'd be in that line too.
Yeah,
I'd be going nuts too.
I can make a decent crepe. We'll pack it up. We'll pack a whole big can of crepes and just go to town. Red Cane asks.
I love crepes.
They are delicious. I have a crepe maker. Makes them real thin. Anyway, do the hosts have any pull rituals or superstitions about pulling which probably aren't true, but you kind of believe anyway. Yeah, I pull until I am disappointed, and then I pull more until I get the character that I want. I don't have any. Mino says he gets drunk before every pull. Sometimes he gets drunk and then pulls on things that aren't.
Mino says that, but has a lot more gems than me, like he hundreds of thousands more gems than me.
He does. He might have more gems than I do. I don't know where we are after the last the Emperor Pity. So, but yeah. Anybody have any interesting? We don't all have to answer, but anybody have any interesting pool rituals you want to share? Our guest Arrow and Ink.
I am slightly a believer in toilet pools. Depends on the character. If they want them enough, and then I have to yell at them to give me their item because I tell them how much I love them. I know it doesn't mean anything, but usually I'll get it by 50K if I tell them how much I love them while I'm pulling on the toilet.
I think that's the best way. I think the odds for pulling Seymour's EX is higher on the toilet than off. Just saying.
I have a ritual. I just go ahead with it wherever I am and just say, let's go, please, please, RNG be in my favor. And Joshua, if you can rig it in my favor, I'd like it to be back in my favor. Just take it away from Mino, please.
Well, Par Snippins asks, what are your least favorite kits in the game? Does anybody have one they want to highlight?
I'd say my least favorite is Warrior of Light because it's super boring.
Yeah, it is.
My favorite is probably Realm. I can't imagine enjoying chaos battles with anyone more than when Realm party.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Arrow, do you have a favorite kit or a least favorite kit?
I don't know. This is one of those ones I have to think on for a moment. Does somebody else want to go first?
I'll go before Aarolei because I'm going to be very wrong in some people's eyes. Is a good way to put it. I really like Aarolai's kit just because it requires a lot of changing of thoughts because her abilities change over time. She doesn't stick with certain specific abilities. You have to choose and think about what you're doing and kind of play to what her current state is. And I kind of like that. It doesn't require Mino says it's just pushing buttons in a certain order and it doesn't matter whatever happens around her. You're just pushing the same buttons every time, but I don't agree with that. But, I don't have a least favorite character other than Cater. Cater's garbage.
Cater is garbage right now, but someday she will become less garbage. Not particularly.
She will become a solo character, and then she'll still be garbage. She'll just be solo garbage.
She is solo garbage.
I do, without going too far down a rabbit hole, I'm just gonna say I look forward to all the people that pity her EX and then get really annoyed that they can't get the cursed artifacts that she needs in order to solo all those stages.
And
just gonna say that.
And then you really only can use her on one stage of Entropy that you may not even need to use her for. But anyway, it is fun to be able to solo those things. So yeah. Mino Spellgood asks, has the podcast moved too far away from casual discussion among friends about Defo and now covers too much information meta? Shut up. How do you what do you think about that? No,
Mino doesn't want to talk about kits anymore. He just wants to complain.
He doesn't want to talk. That's the problem. Now, since the very first episode of this show, we have always covered all of the kits of all of the characters and all of the fights. The only issue is they have become more complex as time has gone on. Which is why now the show is 2 hours as opposed to 30 minutes.
I will help Mino out here. We're not going to talk about how awesome characters are. We're just going to talk about how amazing Zidane would be as a drinking buddy.
That's right.
Because Raw Life agrees with me in chat.
Yeah. But listen, we have a whole bunch of different people listening to us. We talk about this before. There's 50 to 100 people live with us on Twitch every week. Thank you for being here. That's awesome. A lot of you who are live on Twitch with us, you're good at the game. You know the game. You're on Reddit. You're on YouTube. You're on our Discord or other people's Discord. You know what you're doing. We have, several hundred people on our Discord who, again, they're good players. They know what they're doing. Yeah, there's some new players that come in every once in a while, and we try to help them out as much as possible. But there's a lot of pros there. We got a great community on Reddit and everything else. We get a lot of follows on Twitch and on YouTube and everything else. But we have hundreds of people who listen to this podcast as a podcast, hashtag it's a podcast, on any of their favorite streaming services. And several of them, I know this because they email me and tell me things. This is their source. We are your source for defo news and talk. So they're not watching YouTube videos. They're not on Reddit. They're not on Discord. They're not getting all this information. So, we really want to try to have a balance about getting you the best information you can and everything else. So, yeah, so hey, you can always send us what you think and how we're doing and what you'd like to see going forward in the show. Yeah, I can talk about I could talk about Stygian Swell for at least 45 minutes. But that, and me and Pierre probably would have talked about Stygian Swell for about 45 minutes. But that's a different, that's not everyone's cup of tea. No one wants to talk about David Bowie's package as much as me, and I realize that. And that's my personal problem. So, Mino, go back to drinking, and we'll see you on the show next week. But it's nice to have a refresher then.
When is Pierre gonna guest is the next question that Mino is asking.
Oh yeah, so there has been talks about Pierre. What's Pierre doing? Is Pierre still live? Pierre's live. Pierre's doing great. He's in Canada doing Canadian things, living the life, working. Got a new job. It's going fine as far as I know. I've seen pictures of his kids growing up playing hockey because, of course, Canadian, and having a lot of fun. So Pierre's doing fine. He doesn't play the game anymore, obviously. I am going to try, when General Leo comes to Global, I am going to try to get Pierre on the show for that episode. So just wish me luck, and we'll see if we can get him on for the General Leo episode. I think it'd be fun to have him on at that point. So, but he's still alive, and we thank him for pioneering the very first season of the Crystal Chronicles when we were still talking FFRK. And then him and I, of course, started this season 2 and now season 3 of the Crystal Chronicles as it relates to Defo. So that's if you don't know who Pierre is, that's Pierre. Pierre started the Crystal Chronicles podcast with Final Fantasy Record Keeper. And then I came on board, and then we started this one together in season 2. We did share in our Discord, as we're looking ahead to things, GL first poll. So we just did invite you to talk about potential characters who you thought were going to be GL first. So some guesses: Luna Freya, Red 13, Delita from whatchamacallit, Tactics, Sid Orlando, Thunder God Sid, Rico, Aranea. I was trying to think of who got a lot. Kina from Final Fantasy 9, Xenos, Mog from Final Fantasy 6. I'm looking at ones that got some upvotes here on our list. Thanks everybody for doing this. Whole bunch of great guesses.
It eventually became
random.
Name your favorite obscure Final Fantasy character.
The boy that
definitely did.
The boy that wants to be a blitzball when he grows up. I think I'm really putting my hopes on Scott. So, but yeah, so obscure.
The boy who wants to become a blitzball player when he grows up is definitely the most obscure one.
Yeah, he wants to be a blitzball when he grows up. That boy. Yeah.
Wait, they fixed that?
Yeah,
because it was really blitzball player when I first read that.
Oh yeah. Oh, did they fix it? Because in the scene in Final Fantasy X, the boy says, "I want to be a blitzball when I grow up." I think
no. The person who actually wrote it when I read it the first time said blitzball player. So we gotta fix this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he does say blitzball player. Yeah, no, it is a blitzball. They did not fix that in the HD remaster, Squex Joshua is saying. So, hey, here's your chance.
Asks for the boy that wants to be a blitzball player when he grows up. So
yeah,
someone requested that specifically, Joshua. Yeah. So you better get that in there. I know that
Scott.
The blitzball is more popular, but come on, the blitzball player is still in there.
Yeah, I want somebody I saw. I don't know if it was on Reddit, but somebody said somebody wanted the playable regalia. And I actually like that. I like the idea of the default playable regalia character, the car from Final Fantasy 15, which, to be fair, is my second favorite character in Final Fantasy 15.
While my vote was for Red 13, I think the more interesting selection would be for Mog from Final Fantasy 6, just because Moogle meets Moogle, what happens there, especially when they're both called Mog.
Or, hey, there is room for a default in-universe character, Mog, a playable version of Mog. I know there has been, there's potential talk for that. That would be interesting. But we'll probably keep him to the sidelines for now. But we will hopefully know now. Joshua hinted that there would be at least some information. I'm not going to go and put him on record as saying how much we're going to get, but there would be a little bit of information about a GL first on the next official Squex stream, which will be this Monday at the normal time. So make sure you put that on your calendar. I think it's usually about 3 p.m. here Central Standard Time. So check out at Dissidia FFOO on Twitter. That's their Twitter page, and they update that all the time. That is really all that is in front of us. So we do have a lot of, you still have the Emperor event, you still have the co-ops. Make sure you get your Choco boards done for the end of January. We have a new tier of Entropy, and we have a lot of summon board grinding to do, but thankfully not as much.
Grind those treasure boards now.
So you got a lot of stuff to do. Got a lot of stuff to do before Monday, but Monday we're going to see what's coming here at the end of this month and at the beginning of February and throughout February. And so check out that stream, join it live. We do try to post the slides, and Quetz usually does that. Thank you, Quetz, for that. The slides here in our Discord after as the stream is going on, so that you can check them if you can't hit them later. So that is all we know, and looking forward to seeing what we might get as a GL first, not exclusive, but first, although, hey, if you want to throw us an exclusive, great. I do want to thank, of course, Mino Spellgood and Crease, my two co-hosts who do so much for us here on the show. Really want to thank Arrow Tonight and Inkwelder. Aarolei is Leili, Leilee on YouTube. You can catch her. Inkwelder, the Tonberry Troop, you can look Tonberry Troop up. They have a Facebook page. They have a Twitter account now. They're on Reddit. Inkwelder, Teleutes, and Dreamy, and Vaynovis. They are the Tonberry Troop. They do so much great work for our community in terms of the infographics. Thank you that. Thank you, Quetz. He does all the work on MateriaBot. Strafe, one of our moderators who does some great content as well. Who am I forgetting? Jin Lee, who does all of our images and everything else. J.A, one of our moderators. Of course, Macnol's Call to Arms, one of our moderators as well. And Shara89.
Hate13 helped for the intro now.
And yes, and Hate13, thank you for that. And thank you, Anthony, for reminding us that you can get TCC apparel domestically. Again, it's not for profit. It's just a fun thing that we just did for us. So, but if you're here in the United States, you can get one. I did share a picture of my hoodie. I got one of the hoodies. It's real nice, as I was wearing that out to the dentist today. So that was a lot of fun. So people can ask me, what the hell is that? And I can tell them all about the great.
Sorry for non-domestic viewers. We're working on that. We will try to solve it eventually.
Yeah, and if anybody knows a good, a good site or a good online group that does merchandise that could get globally, that's at a decent cost. I'm not looking to make money. I know Mino would like to make money. I'm not looking to make any money. Just looking to have fun with the community and share that. So this has been episode 86. Thank you, everybody. You can catch all of our episodes at tccpodcast.com. There you can find the link to our Discord, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. On the show notes, you can find the infographic Flickr account, all the infographics, including the infographics for the summons and all the information there.
Mark, one last thing before you close out this week's episode. the Twitch episode still says it's episode 85.
Yes.
Sorry.
This is episode 86. And I just can't edit that as I'm doing that. I try to edit that before the show, and I forgot to do this. So this is episode 86 of the Crystal Chronicles. This has been Mark, Kreese, Mino Spellgood, Aarolei, and Inkwelder, and we wish you all good luck as you're grinding. Good luck on your pulls, and hey, goodbye.